Now you might be asking, but what does this have to do with me even being in Toronto? All right, so I recently had someone ask me, how can I contribute value from day one if I'm new to a company, say I just graduated college and I am starting a new job, or I'm an intern. It's summer intern season, so I know a lot of you are interning at different companies right now. I'm currently in my hotel room in Toronto, Canada today. It's actually my last day. I've been here for the past few days, traveling for a work trip. And if you would have asked me like a year ago when I was in consulting if I expected to be traveling at my next job, I probably would have said no, or at least far less. I think business travel is one of those things that many people find pretty glamorous or like the idea of, but once you actually have to do it, and especially if you're doing it on a consistent basis like in consulting, it can become really old really quick. Because as fun as it can be to fly business class and stay in 5-star hotels, at the end of the day, you're still sleeping in a different bed, in a different city, sometimes in a different time zone. And not only that, but work travel is different from vacation travel because you're still thinking about work. And so even though you might be in an exciting new place, it's not necessarily as enjoyable. But that said, I have been really enjoying my time in Toronto for the past few days. Shout out to my friend Judy for showing me around the city. I've been able to get so many cool B-roll shots, which I'm super excited to share with you all. It is such a good time of year right now to visit the city. The weather's great. The people are so nice. Toronto kind of reminds me of New York, but less crazy. But with that, let's head to the office.
A few hours later.
Good afternoon. So it's actually day 2 in Toronto. I didn't film at all yesterday because, well, first of all, it feels kind of weird filming in an office that I'm not familiar with. But second of all, I was just in a conference room pretty much the entire day, stuck in meetings. And so there wasn't really much of an opportunity to go around and film. And also, of course, a lot of the discussions that are happening are confidential. And so I can't film what's going on. But what I can do is obviously give you guys a high-level idea of what I'm even doing here in Toronto in the first place. Essentially, one of the teams that I am working with is very focused on commerce and retail. And when I say commerce, Google has a lot of commerce products. So for example, if you or your friend want to start selling shoes online, you can go onto what's known as Google Merchant Center and start listing your shoes online. So then when someone else searches for orange shoes online, they will see a result that pops up on the Google search page. And obviously they can also pay to have their search listings show up a little bit higher. That's when you see the little thing that says sponsored next to the listing. And so all you need to know is that the team that I'm working with right now the most closely is really focused on improving that user experience and increasing the amount of revenue that we're able to generate by targeting businesses that want to sell products. Now you might be asking, but what does this have to do with me even being in Toronto? Now every quarter, the senior leaders on the team come together in person to discuss what's going on as well as to plan for what's to come. And so as the dedicated strategy and operations person for this team, it's important for me to be a part of these conversations because I have to know what's going on within the business and to be able to make recommendations or help the team think about planning for next year. And so this is my first time traveling since joining Google. I traveled a bit when I was in consulting at BCG, but honestly didn't expect to travel so soon after switching roles. One thing I will say, being quite honest about the experience, is that during these conversations, I am the most junior person in the room. And that comes with its own set of pros and cons. The pros being obviously that I have a lot of visibility into what leadership is thinking, but the cons sometimes being that, these people have a lot more experience than me. I'm also still only about a month into the job, and there's so much that I am still learning, and so it feels a lot like drinking from the fire hose right now. But I'm doing my best to just take lots of notes, ask questions, and I think that over time, a lot of these disparate pieces of information will slowly come together and make more sense to me. All right, so I recently had someone ask me, how can I contribute value from day one if I'm new to a company? Say I just graduated college and I am starting a new job, or maybe I have already been working for some time and I just started at a new company, or I'm an intern, say for example. It's summer intern season, so I know a lot of you are interning at different companies right now. And so the question that this person asked me was, Matt, I feel like I don't want to mess this up, but I'm really new to this company. I don't know anything about it. I want to be able to hit the ground running and contribute value early, but I just don't know how. And so what I've done is I've put together a quick framework in typical consultant fashion. And so to walk you through it, when we're trying to answer the question of how can I contribute value on day one, we have to really understand first what levers a employee at a company has to contribute value. So like the actual things that a employee at a company can do or contribute in a conversation that accomplish something or push you towards a goal. And so I've laid out this framework here. There's 4 columns. The first is contextual knowledge. The second is outsider knowledge. The third is first principles thinking. Fourth is what I've just called executional rigor. And I'll walk you through each of these buckets. So the first one is contextual knowledge. And this is literally just knowledge about the company, the history, all the company's products, who works at the company, how the company is organized, anything that is specific to that company that someone who does not work there or who has not worked there wouldn't know, I would consider contextual knowledge. A couple examples of this are, last year we launched a new product. Right, this is an example of contextual knowledge because if you didn't work at the company last year, then you probably wouldn't have known that they launched this product, unless you were following the company closely from the outside. Another example is Sally reports to Marie. So this is an example of organizational knowledge and understanding the org structure of the company. And this is also something that a person who's new to the company or who has never worked there would clearly not know. And so who is going to possess contextual knowledge 9 times out of 10? The most contextual knowledge is going to be possessed by old employees or people who have been at the company for a pretty long time so that they have seen the history, they know what's going on, they know what the company does, and they know who works for whom. So obviously from day one, as a new employee, you are not going to be able to contribute much contextual knowledge, and that's okay. You are not supposed to, and nobody is going to expect you to because you're new. But if we move to the next column now, which is outsider knowledge, this is what it sounds like. This is knowledge that someone at the company may not necessarily possess because oftentimes it comes from outside of their company, whether it is from a different industry or a different company. Some examples of this are, at Amazon, we used to do X. And so for example, if I am working at Google, but I used to work at Amazon, people at Google aren't going to know what people at Amazon are working on. Like high level, they're gonna understand what Amazon does as a competitor, but they're never gonna know it as intimately well as you do. And so that's a great example of coming from maybe a competitor and bringing a slightly different perspective in that way. Another example is at BCG, we observed that our clients did X. One of the biggest value adds that consulting firms can bring to the table is the fact that they speak with hundreds, if not thousands of clients every single year. They get to listen to a lot of different conversations and see a lot of different problems that their different clients are facing. Whereas someone working specifically at one company might not be able to see the high-level trends that are happening among all of the companies in that industry. And so oftentimes, who's gonna possess outsider knowledge? I would say that old employees, it is possible, but the lion's share of outsider knowledge is gonna come from new employees or people who worked outside of the company. And so this is the first area where you can actually contribute some value, especially if you have pre-existing work experience somewhere else. Now, if we move to the third column, this is what I call first principles thinking. And it's the concept that whenever you have a problem or anything that you really want to understand really well, you break it down into the most basic components and then you really try to understand the underlying reason for each component. And so the reason why this can be valuable is because, again, you have to understand that people working at these companies often have very specialized or very niche knowledge of what they're specifically working on or what the company works on. And sometimes they're so deep in the weeds that they might lose sight of the North Star or the high-level picture. And so even by asking questions like, what's the goal here? Or is this program necessary? Are things that to an outsider might seem obvious to ask, but you would be surprised how much groupthink there is within companies and how sometimes there's not as much critical thinking as I think companies aspire to have. And so, as an outsider, you actually bring a really fresh perspective, and that fresh perspective is inherently valuable to the company because it's different and it's like a litmus test to demonstrate, does something actually even make sense? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how complex a program is or how complex a company is. If someone on the outside cannot understand what the company does and why the company is doing what it is doing, then there is a major problem. And so I think first principles thinking is another great way to contribute value really early on. And I put down here that new or old employees can possess it. It's not dependent on how long you've worked at this company, but sometimes it's a little bit easier as a new employee without having all the pre-existing contextual knowledge to apply this line of thinking. Now, the last and fourth bucket that I've put here is executional rigor. Can you get things done? And can you do them well? Can you do them quickly? And can you do it accurately? These would be things like building a model, PowerPoint, scheduling meetings, or being fast and accurate with other tools that are used at the company that you're working with. Now, I think oftentimes people would think that old employees will have the leg up when it comes to executional rigor just because they're more familiar with the tools and they've been working at the company for a really long time. And I would say that would be broadly true. However, if you come from a field like investment banking or consulting, where you have been trained to work really quickly and accurately with Excel and PowerPoint, for example, then you might actually bring a higher level of executional rigor than some of the existing employees at the company. Especially if it's a company that's very slow moving or old, you might actually be able to introduce some executional rigor because not only will you be faster with PowerPoint, Excel, and some of the other tools and just getting stuff done, but you might even identify new ways of doing things that are just faster or make more sense. Because at a lot of companies, people also just do things the way that they've been done. And sometimes the way that they've been done for the past 10 years isn't necessarily the best way to do it or the quickest. And so if you can even just bring in that fresh perspective again and think about ways that you can be super efficient or bring new ideas to your manager about how you might be able to speed up a certain process, then that in and of itself is also extremely valuable to the company. But anyways, I hope that this makes sense. If you have any questions, also drop them down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Wait, it's open.
This is his exact album cover. Just have to zoom in a little bit.
Oh my god, that looks so cool. Look at the plane. Nice. Look at how smooth it is.
Please stand clear of the doors.
Hello, I'm Matt's personal tour guide. I've been dragging him around the scenic parts of the city for the past 2 days, and he doesn't seem to appreciate it.
No,
or my jokes. Or my jokes. But
I don't know what she's talking about.